Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. Today I have for you Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. So this takes place 5 years after the first game, and if you read the first half of the Revan novel, this would take place 3 years after that. A whole lot of stuff has happened since we last saw Revan in the Revan novel. Sometime after, Revan went on his adventure with Canderous and then got seemingly captured, not knowing what's happened with him until we read part 2, Kreia, it's fine. It's an old game, you should know this. Kreia is Darth Kreia. And, or at least she used to be. Darth Kreia and 2 apprentices that she had, both of which I think were affected by the Mandalorian Wars. I believe Darth Nihilus, there's 3 Sith Lords in this, kind of 2, not really, the last one doesn't count. You have Darth Zion and Darth Nihilus, both of which were affected by the Mandalorian Wars, so they go to train under her tutelage. They eventually betray her, and so with the Republic at this point, which is very weak, because they've just gone through 3 separate wars. They had the Mandalorian Wars, and shortly after that, they had the Jedi Civil War, and now they're having this. But the difference with this game, with this story, is it's quieter, and yet the stakes are kind of higher in a sense, because for the most part, for most of this game, the Sith aren't attacking in armies like they did in the previous game. They're not, attacking planet after planet with full bombardments of soldiers and stuff. This is a very quiet war. Since we last, left off from the Revan novel, these 2 Sith Lords have systematically eradicated almost every Jedi left. This is the first great Jedi purge. There are practically no Jedi left in this game. There are a few that remain. And that's all because of the 2 of them. We meet the Exile, whose canon name is Mitra Surik, and she used to be a general for Revan during the Mandalorian Wars. And you play as her. You meet many companions that are all very interesting and compelling characters. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of them in spoilers. They're all fascinating in their own right. We do a lot of side quests and go to a lot of planets. I do have to say, I don't usually mention gameplay stuff in these reviews because I mostly want to focus on the story. But I will say, for me personally, and this might just be because it was unfinished, only had like a year or whatever to be made. Most of the planets, I have to say, the level design, something about it, I found myself being quite bored by most of it. The story is the only thing that really kept me going. Whereas I quite enjoy both the level design, the gameplay, even though it's old and dated, and the story in KOTOR 1. We don't really have that many returning characters. Bastila shows up in one scene, and she has a hologram message on T3. And we get to see Carth Onasi a couple times, so that was cool. And a big favorite character, which I'll discuss. And you know what? The moment you hear his voice, you know who it is. One of our companions that we eventually get in this game is Mandalore, the Preserver. And Mandalore, the Preserver, is Canderous Ordo, our Mandalorian companion from the previous game. But we are on a mission to stop the Sith before they get rid of all Jedi that as we know it. We have Darth Zion, who's more of a assassin type of Sith. He has a bunch of dark side user minions, not Sith, but dark side users, and they're finding Jedi stealthily and taking them out. Whereas Darth Nihilus is something else entirely. He is a force of nature more than a man. Whatever happened to him, because I believe he was at Malachor 5 where the Mandalorian Wars kind of ended. Whatever happened to him, he's not really a person anymore. All he wants to do is consume, consume, and consume. Anything that has the Force, he consumes. He can basically make an entire planet, like we saw in that short story, or that short comic, Unseen Unheard, just an entire planet withered to nothing. That's how powerful this being is. Sad that the gameplay never really reflects that when we finally fight him. Though maybe that's the point. But we'll get to that. I don't know what else I can tell you without spoiling this game for you. This is very much a deconstruction of Star Wars. This is a fourth wall breaking sort of deconstruction, which I feel like The Last Jedi wanted to be. I don't usually make the new canon comparisons, but a lot of ideas in there. Some of them are similar to this, but I felt one was done in a disrespectful manner, whereas I felt this, respected what, is supposed to come later, and obviously publication-wise has come first, respects that while still being able to critique stories and do its thing. But Kreia is absolutely one of the most fascinating and compelling characters in all of fiction, but most certainly for the Star Wars expanded universe. I am curious what her and Verge would have to say to one another. They're very interesting characters. Mitra Surik, in her own right, it's a blank slate in the game because, it's supposed to be you. But even still, having the background, that she was a general in the Mandalorian War, she's another Jedi who's like, we can't just sit here and do nothing. We can't be passive. We have to go and do something about this. All that stuff's really fascinating. And so having that background, because, they didn't want there's no real twist in this game. It's just kind of, I guess it is a twist, but it's not really. The twist, though, isn't your backstory. It's just kind of what you figure out as you play the game. And yeah. One thing I will say is when I get to the part 2 of the Revan novel, a lot of people are upset with the Revan novel. And the Old Republic MMO in general, because they really wanted to see what Chris Avellone, who I love Chris Avellone, he helped with the first 2 Fallout games, which are really hard for me to play because they're so old and outdated. But I've watched videos. I've watched, there's a guy named Oxhorn. I've watched his entire video on Fallout 1 and 2. Fallout 1 and 2 are glorious. Their stories are incredible. I love the Fallout universe, and I love what he contributed to that. I've loved pretty much everything I've seen from him. I got Tyranny, which is another video game on Epic Games for free, and I was playing that, and I'm like, this is good stuff, So I think he worked on that. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Having read the Revan novel first, everything seems to line up pretty well, because they do mention this threat in the unknown regions. This threat that Revan, as a Sith Lord, was originally preparing for. That's why he didn't kill everybody off. Why he was trying to gain more and more numbers to fight off this unknown threat. And even still, if you're reading the novel and including SWTOR and not getting upset because it's not some mysterious threat that you had hoped it would be, I think it all fits fairly nicely. So I quite enjoy that. It feels pretty connected. But yeah, I want to talk about spoilers. There's some big important concepts I want to get to, but if I talk about it, then I'll be spoiling the game for you. So if you have not played it, or if you have not, or you don't play video games, please watch a Let's Play before I talk about it, because it will kind of ruin the nuance of it unless you're watching it. Obviously, the light side way of playing is the more canon version. So that's if you were trying to go with it, is as accurate as possible way of the events went, you would want to find a Let's Play that did that. But also to further elaborate on stuff, if you feel like I didn't describe the story exactly well enough, which I probably didn't, you can. I will have a link to videos that basically explain the plot to you, in case you don't play video games and you don't want to watch a Let's Play series, which is fine. And I'll also leave a link to this interesting video that I watched. It's like an hour and 50 minutes on Krea's philosophy, which I think is really fascinating with your time. But anyway, I'm going to get into spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, it's time for you to go. I want to talk about this now, because I try to follow my notes, because I take them as I'm playing through or reading through, so it's usually in chronological order. I want to talk about Krea first, because I feel like that's the most important part of this game. So you have to talk about it. Krea used to be Eren Kai, who was a Jedi master. Now Revan had many masters when he was training as a Jedi, but his very first master was Eren Kai. That was his master. Once Revan turns to the dark side and starts fighting, the Jedi exile her because they blame her for his fall. So she leaves the Jedi Order. I'm not exactly sure when, but she eventually becomes a dark side user, becomes Darth Traya. And, after the Mandalorian Wars have ended, there are many people who have been affected by this. Darth Zion, for example. You see his body, and it's covered in cracks and sores, and blood is there all around. And you're like, what is with this guy? Well, the pure hatred and pain that he feels is keeping him alive. Like, every time you fight him in the game, he just regens his health. He cannot die. He is a slave to the dark side because literally the only thing keeping him alive is his anger and hatred and the pain that he feels. Constant pain. The dark side is keeping his body together. Otherwise, he would just die. This is the only thing keeping him alive. Darth Nihilus, on the other hand, he could care less about the Sith. He could care less about the Jedi. He wants to consume everything. He's going to basically kill off the rest of the Jedi, kill off the Republic, and once he's eaten most of that life, and all there is left is the Sith, then he'll eat the Sith too. He just wants to consume, a slave to never-ending hunger. Now, Darth Treya's original plan was to realize something about the Force. And this is where it gets fourth wall breaking. Darth Treya, Krea, however you want to put it, she's basically a fictional character that realizes that there's an author controlling her. That's how she views the Force anyway. And she wants to get rid of the Force. She wants to exterminate it forever, so that way the universe can be fair and the title Star Wars can cease to be. Because she sees the future. She sees, and I don't necessarily agree with her with everything, but the way she sees things is she sees there's going to be never-ending constant war, because darkness is always going to rise up and light's going to have to end it. But if you just get rid of the Force, then all this war, all this blood won't have to be. Because like with the Chosen One prophecy, that was, bringing balance to the Force by destroying the dark side in episode 6 with Emperor Palpatine. But in order to get there, you had to have a really bloody war with the Clone Wars, and lots of death during the rebellion to get to that point. And so she sees all that, and she doesn't want that. Now, her initial plan when she was still Sith Lord Darth Treya, what she would have done would have killed a lot of people, would have left very few people left in the galaxy, but the galaxy would be fair. But she was betrayed by Darth Nihilus and Darth Zion, who desired power over what she was trying to do. And so they betrayed her, and they made her lose her connection to the Force. And so when we meet her in the game, she takes on the name Kreia, because it's kind of like a mix between her original name and her dark side name, and it's in the middle. Also very telling that her, you can always see the Force alignment in the games, and everyone else is, either like leaning dark, leaning light. She's always straight in the middle. But I just wanted to mention that, and she sees the exile as her new hope. But we'll get more into that. I'm going to go in chronological order now. Starting with, at this point in time that we start the game, the Republic, as I said this earlier, but the Republic is really, really weak. Like, they're not doing well. They're hanging on by a thread, which is also why this is very important. Because when we get to the second half of the Revan novel, I hear the ending's pretty sad. However, the next story chronologically doesn't happen for the next 300 years, which is important, because had the Sith that we're reading about in Revan, had they shown up in just like 10 years, the Republic, the Jedi, extinguished, gone forever, because there are so few. We have now Jedi that we've kind of trained in this game to become the new Jedi, but that's about it. And the Republic is hanging on by threads, so they needed those years to rebuild and to have a fighting chance against the Sith. But we start off on this mining facility, Pragus, where we first get introduced to Kreia and Atton, who's one of our companions. Atton's a funny character, but also a very deep character, if you're able to get him to open up. And Kreia, of course, is cryptic as she is through most of the game, because this is how she likes to talk to you. This part of the game was absolutely boring. The initial mystery that is welcomed for the first little bit is really overdone when you're still there for like 4 hours in. You're like, can I just leave this place? This place sucks. But yeah. We also get to see Karth for like a single second. So at this point in time, barely 100 Jedi remain. Barely. Because of the huge purge that happened. Then we head to Telos. And we meet Luxa, who's a Zeltron, which I thought was pretty cool. Basically, you just need to get off. You have to go get off planet so you can go elsewhere. But however, you get stuck having to do a bunch of side quests and all that. You can help the Ithorians, who are trying to help, rebuild Telos because it got bombarded during the Jedi Civil War. Or you can help Zerka Corporation, which is the big banking corporation of this time period. And they're like, the evil option. Kreia kind of criticizes you for both, though, because that's what Kreia likes to do. If you do something nice, she's like, why are you being nice? There could be unforeseen consequences. But then she also gets mad at you for being needlessly mean. So either way, you get criticized by her. And then I just want to mention Luxa, because I don't know if we have seen his Zeltron yet, chronologically. But she's one of the few Zeltrons that we've seen in the Old Republic era, at the very least. And then we get introduced to Darth Nihilus. Again, if you have read the short, really little short comic, Unseen Unheard, you see the Mariluka planet utterly destroyed. But Darth Nihilus takes one being alive with him. And this is the girl with no eyes. I also forgot. I'm pretty sure in the Knights of the Old Republic comics by John Jackson Miller, one of the Jedi who helps, Drayson kill the Padawans. Spoilers for that series, I guess. Um, she's one of that race with the no eyes thing, which I thought was cool. The connection there. Um, but she's, being like there's a disturbance in the Force Master, the typical thing. Um, but of course, she's not doing it because she truly believes in the dark side. She just saw her entire planet get utterly destroyed and every Jedi on it destroyed. So all she just goes, I have to. This guy is death. If I don't, I have to follow him. So she's facing a lot of PTSD. Is what I'm trying to get at. Um, we also have Powdor with his PTSD. So this is cool. So later on, during the Telos section, you have to go, because there's like a station on top of the planet, but you have to go down to the planet. There you meet Baldur. Baldur is a Zabrak, the Darth Maul race, and he served under you in the Mandalorian Wars. In fact, he seems to always refer to you as General, and he hates Circa Corporation. So it's a good thing I went light side, because one, that's the canon way to go about it, and two, that would have been really awkward because he really despises Circa. Anyway, he helps us do the stuff that we need to do. But he doesn't get as much development as other characters, but I do appreciate that he's a link to our past in the game. We get to this icy part of Telos where we get introduced to Atris, who is a frickin' person. But Atten and Kreia get locked up for a bit. And they have an entire conversation, which is... I mean, they had a conversation before that on Telos, on the station. But, again, it's really fascinating. And it brings the intrigue more when she goes, there's a secret you're hiding, murderer. Well, if you don't want me to tell the exile what you've done, then you're gonna do what I say, And she just does stuff like that throughout the game. But it was a fascinating little scene. We have a debate with Atris. Atris is the absolute worst. After the Mandalorian Wars, you came back with the Council. They decided you needed to be exiled from the Order. And Atris was headlong, instead of just exiling her, we need to imprison her or kill her. She was very headstrong about that. And I could do a whole video on Atris alone. Let us just say that Atris is purposely aggravating. And yet she's also a really interesting character as well. Anyway, I'm going to move forward. We then head to Dantooine. At least that's where I went next. And we get to, eventually, after doing a bunch of stuff, meet the Disciple. Kind of this Jedi historian, but also works for the Republic and Karth. He shows how normal people see no difference between Sith and Jedi, which is a sentiment that's reiterated in Fate of the Jedi, if you've read that series, with Luke Skywalker and his Jedi Order, and Dala as the new Chief of State. Because, right now public sentiment for the Jedi is very low. Because as far as normal people understand, they're all Force users. And ever since the time of Exar Kun, there's been war after war. I mean, one of them was the Mandalorians, but still, right after that, the Jedi Civil War, where a bunch of people who fought in Mandalorian Wars turned to the Sith ways because of Revan. And they see no difference. And this is reiterated in Fate of the Jedi, because they're just two Force users with different philosophies. And I find it curious that kind of always is a reoccurring thing, because normal people don't see it. That's another thing. I believe it was on Telos' station where Kreia talks to Atten and has a conversation where she goes, in one sense, you normal people, non-Force users, are more impressive sometimes than people with the Force. because people with the Force, this is Jedi and Sith both, tend to rely on it really hard. Luke not as much, because he lived for so long without it. And to an extent, Anakin. But you start relying on it so much, it becomes, a part of you. And so, get rid of the Force all of a sudden, take away a lightsaber, give them a blaster, they won't be able to do anything. Whereas a normal person can't rely on the Force. Han Solo can't rely on the Force. I mean, the Force is still around and inside everyone, but he can't really access it. He can't channel it necessarily. So he has to rely on his skill alone. I just thought it was an interesting conversation. You can look up like playlists of every conversation that Kreia has. They're all fascinating. But up next, Vrook is the Borsk Phala of the Old Republic. Vrook is the worst. I hate Vrook. Vrook was in a couple comics prior to the Old Republic, or the Kotor, the Knights of the Old Republic. He was in Knights of the Old Republic. He's the worst. He is just the most aggravating Jedi of all time. Being like, well, maybe if you did this and this, you wouldn't turn dark side. I didn't turn dark side. Of course you're dark side. We are Jedi and we are right, and you are wrong, and to think otherwise just shows your utter ignorance. I despise him. He is the worst. But it's okay, because he dies later in this game. Which says a lot, because I actually felt bad for Borsk when he finally died. Visas Mar, who is the girl that was with Darth Nihilus, comes on the ship to kill us or to fight us, but we beat her. And she just, kind of like that, decides to devote her life to Mitra Surik, to the exile, to help you against Darth Nihilus. We later on get to, I think this is on the Nar Shaddaa level. I don't have much to talk about on Nar Shaddaa. It's a very boring place with a lot of boring side quests. But eventually we get to this big giant ship. Is Goto's ship. Goto is a man in charge of the exchange. The exchange has had a bounty on your head because there's a big reward for Jedi right now. And all the Sith seem to think that you're Jedi. When you're not, technically, but they all want to kill you. And so the exchange has a bounty on you. The only thing really interesting to say about Goto is, once you break through his ship and everything and you're talking to him, he's like, yeah, I'm not going to ally myself with the Sith, because then there's going to be nothing left. And even though it seems like the Republic may not win right now, I want to make sure that, he's a very, was it like lawful evil or whatever, like he only cares about himself and his money, but he also knows that with the Sith that there's gonna be a lot of issues with trying to do what he wants to do. So that's about it for his character. I don't have much to add on his character really, but he's another companion we get. Also, there's at one point, I just want to mention it because I thought it was cool. You can get Arca Jeth's robes. Arca's the Jedi Master who dies during the Tales of Jedi with Eula Qudram and everything. It looks nothing like his robe, but it's still cool. That's just a little mention I want to mention. Duxon. We head to Duxon before we go to Onderon, which is where the Mando War started, and is also, I believe, where the Mandalorians crashed after the comics, and an alien picked up Mandalore's mask and put it on and became the new Mandalore. And this is also where we get to finally see Canderous after all this time. I mean, if you're reading in chronological order, then you read the first half of Revan, where Revan said, I need you to become Mandalore. And he became Mandalore the Preserver, to restore the Mandalorians. And there's before we do a bunch of side quests for the Mandalorians to gain respect or whatever. And it's good to see more of the Mandalorians, because they were kind of just this. They are the Klingons of the Star Wars universe. They were just the enemy in Knights of the Old Republic, besides Canderous, and we get to see a bit more of their culture in this game. But before we head to Onderon, Kreia has a discussion with Canderous, and it's she's so mean to him, and I don't appreciate that, because Canderous is one of my favorite characters of this era. But everything she says is true. She tells him, you're trying to fix your Mandalorians. You're trying to become something again, to become this great army, this great threat. But you will never, ever be as powerful as you once were. And that is true if you look at all of Star Wars. I mean, I don't know about the Old Republic, but I know they're not this huge army threat. I know they helped the Sith. You get to the prequel era, we have a couple Mandalorians. They remember their old times, they remember their customs, their honor, but they're not a powerful army. The original trilogy, forget it. We have Boba Fett, he's a bounty hunter. He's certainly no warrior. I mean, I guess you could consider him a warrior, but he's not, And then even post episode 6, he does, Boba Fett becomes Mandalore. He, helps the Mandalorians to become a little bit more prevalent in the galaxy, but it's never as big as it was before KOTOR. Never again do they ever reach that. So everything that Mandalore's trying to doing, everything that Canderous wants is kind of all in vain, because it will never be great as it once was. And on that depressing note, forward. They head to Onderon, and then they have to leave, because reasons. That's all I have to say about Onderon for now. Then we head to Korriban, our last stop, before we go back to Onderon, and then kind of get toward the end game. The Sith Academy went to crap. I mean, it was already like this, built next to this old ruin. But now the Sith Academy on Korriban is abandoned. No one's left, and it's gone to crap, which I already said. But we do get to fight Zion, Darth Zion, and this is where we first see that, like, you can't kill him because he'll just keep regenerating. Kreia even says you have to leave. Then we go back to Duxon again, and we enter Frida Nad's tomb, which is cool. I have nothing else to add other than it was nice to have a comics mention. And then we finally head back to Dantooine. Because we've been going to all these planets to find Jedi. We finally found all the ones we needed to find, and then we head back to Dantooine so we can talk to them. And this is where we learn the truth. This is the big... It's not a big twist like, oh, hey, you're Revan. But it is a pretty interesting thing, because it kind of uses game conventions and, puts it into the story. It's the same thing that KOTOR 1 did in a sense, because KOTOR 1, right, it took you only like a month to train to become this great Jedi Padawan, and now you're going on a mission to stop Darth Malak. And you're like, well, it's because I'm the main character. That's how it goes, That's just kind of what you expect from role-playing games. You are the hero, you can do this, you can do that. And then you find out, no, because this works story-wise and gameplay-wise. You excel this fast not because you're just the hero and you're so great, but because you've already done all this before, which is why you're able to redo it so quickly. You're already a master of it, which makes sense. In this one, you keep getting more powerful and more powerful and more powerful, and that's how it works in this game. You gain XP, you get stronger, you level up your character. That's how these role-playing games work. However, you find out that you are a wound in the Force, the same as Darth Nihilus. In that, whenever you strike down an opponent, you don't only kill them, you gain the Force, like, sort of essence within them. It makes you stronger. And that's just so cool. And you find out that's the real reason they exiled you. Because not only do you do that, because it's kind of like Darth Nihilus' thing, he just consumes everything from everyone. But you also give. You make bonds between people stronger. And you influence people. You know, even people that wouldn't necessarily always agree with you want to be with you. And the council's afraid that Mitra would affect their judgment, affect their mind, so they cast her out. And then they say they're going to strip the Force from you permanently, forever. Like Nomi Sunrider did to Eula Quadroma. But Kreia comes in, stops them, and lectures them about their arrogance, about their hypocrisy. That whole scene was excellent. The voice acting for Kreia is absolutely fantastic. And then she kills them. And then she's gone. And you have to go find her. And then we head to the Ravager, which is the ship that Darth Nihilus is on. And we defeat him. Now, this is really anticlimactic, because people make him out to be this big, great threat. And from the comic, he seemed like a big, great threat. But he gets defeated so easily. Now, this is always a debate between people, because their powers seem to be very similar. Emperor Vitiate and Darth Nihilus. People go, well, Emperor Vitiate, he's a Force user, so he'd get utterly destroyed by Darth Nihilus. I don't know about that. I don't know. But because Darth Nihilus and Mitra Surik are kind of one and the same, if you try to suck life Force essence, the Force from her, you can't, because she's kind of able to use the Force, but she's not a part of it. It's weird. And so they're able to defeat him pretty easily, which is really anticlimactic, but also kind of very fitting. Because all he is at this, there's no man really. He just wants to eat, and eat. That's it. That's his only motivation. And he goes out with a whimper. And then we head to Malachor 5. And then we meet Zion. Or we see Zion again. And we fight him, but there's no way to kill him. He just keeps regenerating. The only way for Zion to finally die is for you to convince him that he should just let go and die. Not really a dark side option. It's like, is this a life worth living? You're in pain and anger almost every waking moment of your life. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to keep going, to keep pushing, to keep killing? When nothing brings you peace? When you're constantly in pain? And it was a battle of belief. But the exile finally wins, and Darth Zion allows himself to die. And then we get to Kreia, who has put on her Darth Traya outfit yet again, and she's the final enemy of the game. It's such a conflicting ending, because the canon ending is you blow up Malachor 5, leave. She says she has no regrets, that she loves you, that she would end the galaxy for you. She, her initial plan didn't work out. You were her new plan. That, you'd stay on Malachor 5, that Force users would flock to you, and that you would end the cycle of violence, death, and war. People would learn a new way. That doesn't happen, because you blow it up. and the movies and everything else happen. Again, very interesting character. I feel like I can make an entire video on Kreia alone, but other people have done a better job. So as I said, if you want to understand Kreia in all of her crazy, interesting ways of thinking, look in the description. You know, you were her salvation. It's interesting because even if you try to save her, she says, "You can't save me. I don't need saving, but I thank you for trying." And she's so proud of you, no matter what decision you make, which is weird. And then she dies. The planet dies. You go off with your friends in the Ebon Hawk. To where? Have to read the second half of Revan to find out. Overall, I think as a game, it is, and it's not entirely the developer's fault. They only had like a year to make it or whatever. It is not as good as KOTOR 1. I would say even the story is not as entertaining as KOTOR 1, but it's a lot deeper than KOTOR 1. There's a lot more under the surface. Each character seems to have a theme. You know, you look at Darth Zion, his, and the way he uses his force powers, the way that he's still alive. Darth Nihilus becoming, the farthest you can go with the dark side, where just you're nothing but an animal. You just gotta eat. Kreia with her, beliefs that, because she does what she sets out to do for the most part in this game. She gets rid of the remaining Jedi. There's only a few Jedi remaining that are new because of Mitra, and they'll help rebuild the Order. The Sith are gone, and Kreia, at the very least, because the canon ending is that you blow up Malachor 5, at the very least she knows that she's right, even if you don't stick with it. So yeah, definitely an interesting ride. Fascinating. Kreia's voice actress is phenomenal, and all the dialogue is interesting. The character's really interesting. Myra's backstory, I didn't even really mention Myra at all, but she's an interesting character. Hanhar with his way he twisted the life debt, like that's just interesting. Baldor and his devotion to you, the disciples' devotion to you, Atton's past, which I didn't even really get into, but that's interesting in of itself. And Kreia herself, and Canderous, and what he's trying to do for the Mandalorians and Saul, makes for a very good story. And I like how it, Kreia, she doesn't like feeling like the universe is deterministic, that everything has to happen a certain way because the Force wills it so. And in a sense, she's not wrong. And it's fascinating that you can deconstruct a universe like that, critique something like that, while still being respectful of it, Like, it acknowledges, like, yeah, this is kind of how the Force works, and I don't like that, and I want to stop that. And then also while critiquing the Jedi and stuff, which is, they address in the first game, but it's much more in depth here. Would I say I would honestly play this again? I would if I'm going in a chronological order, but if I just wanted to play one of the games again, I'd probably go KOTOR 1 personally. But yeah, it is certainly a story that is different from a lot of other Star Wars, and definitely very, very thought-provoking. But that is about it, guys. This is one of the longest videos I've ever done. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more comedy stuff that I have done, please go check out Finn Shamrock, where we make funny videos together. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want more Legends content. And as always, guys, may the Force be with you. Also, if you go check out Matt Wilkins' channel, his last 6K live stream, if you go like an hour in, I show up, which was the highlight of my year. That was great. Thank you, Matt, if you're watching. That was awesome. But you should check it out. It's not just the parts that I'm in, just all of it as a whole. It was there was some interesting stuff talked about. Then they go into baseball, which is not interesting at all. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a fun like 2.5 hours, at least for what I was on. I still have to go back and watch the first hour that I wasn't there for, because I watched it all. So, but yeah, thank you all for watching. I love the expanded universe so much. You can tell such vast and different stories. This was different from a lot of the other things that I've read and watched, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for that. I enjoyed Kreia as a character. She's one of the most phenomenal female characters ever. Um, and I'm excited to see more of the EU. I'm really excited actually to see the Old Republic MMO. I know a lot of people love these two games and really don't like, SWOTOR, and they're like, we want KOTOR 3. F this MMO. Fair enough. But I'm curious to see what it has to offer, and I hope you all join me, at least in what I think of the MMO and the associating comics and novels revolving around that time. And see me in part 2 of Revan, where we get to see what goes on with Revan and Mitra in the conclusion to their stories until the MMO. Until then, guys, I'll see you then.